May I now request our President, Shri Vivek Gupta ji, to start the proceedings.
Welcome, distinguished members, friends of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I have great pleasure in extending a warm and hearty welcome to all of you to this e-workshop on this TDS/TCS for MSMEs. Like with this pandemic and COVID times, we thought a lot of announcements in the budgets will actually not be carried through, but they actually ended up, happening. And from 1st of October, one new demon supposedly has been unleashed. It's called TCS. Now, whether it's a demon or whether it's a mouse that we can tame, that Vivek ji, Sanjeev ji, and others will tell us. On one hand, we feel that the ease of doing business will be demolished because of this, and on the other hand, the government, and I know because I'm from the government side partially, so the government needs data to plug revenue leakages which were happening due to people resorting to nefarious means. So coming back, TDS, TCS, and probably ours is one of the only countries which has had a very successful run with TDS as far as the government is concerned. Yes, it does increase our compliances. There can always be much better method of deducting TDS and uploading TDS. There could be online tools instead of the returns and everything. But going forward, it is a part of our reality. Now, we can understand, I had only requested Sanjeev Bhai that this 1% TCS is, very complicated, because on selling goods, till now, we had a concept that TDS or TCS was only applicable on, on service-related transactions. It was never on this. In fact, some months ago, I was told there is something called a TDS on GST and all also. So now we have this TCS on goods. So I think now the government is finally trying to merge. Now my research tells me that there was a banking cash transaction that was levied, and it was subsequently withdrawn after a couple of years. But the data that the government got because of that was amazing amount of data on how the cash was moving in the banking system. So yes, I don't know whether I am for it or not. It will only time will tell when my harassment is there. But once again, CBDT must have done it with good implementation. But as it happens with a lot of government initiatives, the intention is good, but the implementation is botched up. So probably Vivek ji and others will throw some light on what to do or how to do and what can be done to make it lighter. On a lighter note, during one of our recent committee meetings, Akash and Sanjeev ji were there, and one member said that they have been sent a 700-page book by the income tax department on, it's basically a manual on how to file the income tax returns. Now, the income tax department thinks it is doing a favor or a service to the SSC by giving him that book, but the SSC here was very troubled that he now has to read 700 pages to file a 3-page return. So, over to both of you, Vivek ji and Sanjeev ji.
Thank you. Thank you, President, for your opening remarks. Open up the Pandora box, really. But it is for this TCS. Is it for the data collection, or is it for imposing another tax, another compliance? Only thing I should say that this provision of TCS on sale of goods under section 206C within bracket 1H has wide ramifications, because till now TCS was applicable only on certain items on services, but covering all the goods within the purview of TCS, almost all the business entities are under the umbrella. Going forward, the compliance of the provision of this section is going to be tough. It requires an understanding of both the buyers and the sellers for the proper execution and implementation of provision. And to explain this phenomena in detail, we have our expert, Shri Vivek Jalan, who is an expert on direct as well as indirect taxes. And we are happy that Vivek ji has accepted our invitation and has come to clarify all the doubts on TCS. So without taking any more further time, I quickly pass on the baton to Sri Vivek Jalanji, our experts today, to have his presentation and then take some few questions for on the interactive session. Over to Vivek Jalanji.
Vivekji, before you proceed, I, I must tell you, Sanjeevji, whatever questions come, you can please, because I will not be there for throughout although I wanted to be here, but I will not be here for the entire duration. So please run the Q&A when happens and Akash will be doing the VOT. But certain issues have been raised by our members already. You might want to consider addressing them when you address us. One is the provision on deemed exports, then the provision of TCS on SEZs and the transactions that happen within or with SEZ EOUs, then the TCS applicability on free of cost sales or such as samplings, etc., warranty replacement. So although the CBDT has issued guidelines, but as CBDT has repeatedly in the past has said that these are guidelines, they are not law, and their own assessing officers have very, very different views than the guidelines, and the interpretation is a different matter altogether. Over to you, Vivekji.
Thank you, sir. And good afternoon to all Honorable President, Merchant Chamber, Shri Vivek Gupta, Honorable Senior Vice President, Akash ji, my long known colleague and friend, Kothari ji, Honorable delegates who are attending this workshop, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for Merchant Chamber for inviting me to this very pertinent workshop on TCS on sale of goods. And already it's a lot of water has flown under the bridge and lot of clarifications, circulars, press releases from CBDT have come on this subject. And a lot of articles you would find online and material also. So because the ramifications, as we have all already discussed, of this 206C1H are very, very wide, and President himself has given me few questions which I will answer, and not few, I will try to answer all the questions on the matter. Participants, I don't know, Kothari ji, how you would like to have the question answered. Participants can write on the chat box also, and we can reply on to the queries.
Yes, sir. Yes, that can also be done.
Yeah. So let us start. I will just share my screen with the PPT. Sir, is the PPT visible?
Yes, Vivek.
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah. So, friends, just a small understanding of this TCS. By and large, everybody would know. This TCS under 206C1H First of all, the moment you see 206C1H, immediately you would be knowing that there is from 1 to 1 at least G is there. So TCS provisions are not new in income tax. They have been there, but the gamut of this has been widely increased by this 206C1H. Another one amendment has come of TCS on LRS, Liberated Remittance Scheme. So that also we will discuss. There are other sections in 206C also, which we will discuss. As far as this 206C1H is concerned, it is very, very simple. 206C1H is applicable on sale of goods by a seller to a buyer at the rate of 0.1%. Till 31st March, it will be 0.075%. It is applicable only when the consideration is received, right, on sale of goods. So when you sell the goods and when the buyer pays you the money with respect to those goods, say you are selling goods worth 1 crore plus 18 lakh rupees GST. So 1 crore 18 lakh rupees is the value of your invoice. On that, you will charge 0.075% TCS. Mind the word charge. I will replace it as we go along with the word collect, right? So charge, generally we say on invoice charge, but in TCS we will use the word collect or disclose. So you collect 0.075% on the invoice value and you pay it to the government. The buyer's 26AS form will show the credit, and when the buyer submits his income tax return, he can take a credit of that amount. Same is the case when you purchase the goods from a vendor. So what will affect your tax computations? You have to rework a little, right? You already had to work your advanced tax computations when the TDS and TCS rates were reduced by 25% from 14th of May. So here again, you have to recalculate, although the impact would be little. ERP changes you must have all done, and we'll discuss a little about the ERP changes also, because these provisions would impact your invoices also to some extent. So now, with this backdrop, let us just go through the provisions. While the impact is big, but the provisions are very, very small, just hardly around 20 lines provision. So as we go along, we understand slowly and steadily the provisions. 206C1H provides that every person being a seller, so it is applicable on a seller, not a supplier, as we understand in GST. So first thing to understand, in GST, the charging section talks about supply, but here the collecting section is on the seller. So interstate branch transfers would not be applicable to TCS under 206C1H. We know GST is applicable on branch transfers. So every person being a seller who receives the amount as consideration, so it is on receipt of consideration, not on accrual basis. For sale of any goods, so you have to understand what are goods first, and only if the underlying item is goods, then TCS would be applicable. Of the value or aggregate of such value exceeding 50 lakh rupees in any previous year, right? So the aggregate value of the goods which should be sold to a buyer in any previous year. You know, in income tax, previous year starts from 1st April. So from 1st April, aggregate value of receipts from a buyer should be more than rupees 50 lakh. And from that time, the impact of this TCS would start, other than goods being exported. So no TCS on exports. Mind that with this we understand what is exports, right? So export does not include SEZ supply, export does not include EOU supply, it does not include deemed sales, anything. Export means taking goods out of India. It's a one line definition. When goods are moving from India to out of India, it is exports, right? Or goods covered under subsection 1, 1F or 1G. We'll come to this, what is 1, 1F and 1G. Shall, at the time of receipt of such amount, collect from a buyer a sum equal to 0.1% of the sale consideration, exceeding 50 lakh rupees. However, if the buyer does not provide his PAN number or Aadhaar number, then the TCS would be applicable at the rate of 1%. Right? Who all are not liable for TCS? We said exporters for export of goods not required to collect TCS. If you are selling to any central government, state government, embassy, high commission, legation commission, consulate, and trade representation of a foreign states, please note PSUs are not covered. Many times we combine this 206C1H with 206C1, 1F, 1G, which we are used to, but this TCS under 206C1H is applicable for sale to public sector units. They are not government. A person importing goods into India, so no applicability of this TCS. Who is a seller? That is, who are those sellers on which TCS is not applicable? Those sellers whose total sales, gross receipts or turnover. Mind that the word is total sales, comma, gross receipts or turnover, which means either the sales or gross receipts or turnover of a businessman, if that is less than 10 crore rupees in the immediately preceding financial year. Does not have to do anything with this financial year. If in the last financial year your turnover or gross receipts was less than 10 crore rupees, then in the current financial year, that is the current previous year, TCS would not be applicable on you. So every year, 1st April, you have to see whether in the previous year your turnover, total sales or gross receipts were less than 10 crore. If yes, then TCS is not applicable in this year, even though in this year your turnover may be 100 crores. If it is more than 10 crores in the previous year, then it is applicable to you even if your receipts is less than 10 crores in the current previous year, right? So friends, this is the these are the provisions for TCS under 206C1H. As I said, very small provisions. Thereafter, on 29th of September 2020, the CBDT has issued a circular number 17, clarifying certain issues. Well, I must say also not taking cognizance of what the industry was doing with these provisions. So first of all, what most of the companies, especially the larger companies, what they are doing, because collecting this TCS on receipt of the consideration would be a problem. Why it would be a problem? Say you do not charge. You have an invoice of 1 crore plus 18 lakh, 1 crore 18. You do not show or disclose TCS on your invoice. The buyer will never pay you this 0.075%. They would want something, a debit note or any other document, or they would want it written on the invoice that, gentlemen, you please pay off this TCS. So what industry is doing? It is disclosing this amount on the invoice. Many companies across the country, they have even taken a stand that until these provisions are streamlined, they would just disclose it on the invoice, collect and pay. They will not wait for the consideration to be received for payment of this TCS to the government, because again, receipt of consideration, to wait for it, it would require a lot of reconciliation and unnecessarily जो प्रिंसिपल अमाउंट है उसी से ज्यादा देखेंगे पेनल्टी या इंटरेस्ट हो जाएगा. So industry has taken a view that to disclose it on the invoice and to pay off to the government to get saved from further litigation. But in the circular 17/2020, nowhere it is mentioned. So we will do a hybrid of our understanding on what is practically implemented by many industries and what is the law. The law says that this TCS will be paid to the government only when you received the money from the customer. However, many times, many industries, what they have done is they have just collected it on the invoice, paid it off to the government, just to save themselves from further litigation or reconciliation issues. So circular 17/2020 has clarified. Now, first of all, what is goods? As I said, this TCS is applicable only on goods. So goods are defined in various acts. Two relevant acts under which goods are defined is the GST Act, Goods and Services Tax Act, and the Sale of Goods Act, right? There are two major points of difference between the definition of goods as per Sale of Goods Acts and GST Act. Under GST Act, securities, that is shares, are not considered to be goods, but actionable claim is considered to be goods. Whereas under Sale of Goods Act, securities are considered to be goods, but actionable claim is not considered to be goods. So the most important thing is that which act should we follow for the purpose of income tax, because goods are not defined under income tax. So since goods definition under GST is applicable only to the GST Act, and Sale of Goods Act is a much wider act, therefore it is generally understood that we should follow Sales of Goods Act definition. In Sale of Goods Act, securities, as I said, is also goods. So on sale of shares, this TCS would be applicable, right? However, the CBDT has clarified via Circular 17/2020 that to remove difficulties, the transaction on securities or commodities which are traded through stock exchanges, so sale of shares and security through stock exchanges, they would not be liable to TCS. However, important to note, if in a private company you are selling shares and receiving a consideration, then TCS would be applicable on sale of such shares. Again, electricity, is it goods? The answer is yes. It has been held by the Supreme Court. Also, as per the classifications, electricity is considered to be goods. So, sale of electricity. If a private party is selling electricity, right, many a times we take a reimbursement of electricity. So, sale of electricity is considered to be goods, and TCS would be applicable on sale of electricity. However, transaction in electricity through power exchanges registered in accordance with Regulation 21 is not liable to TCS under 206C1H. Right? Now, a pertinent question, which many, which there was a confusion, is what do we do for sales which have happened prior to 1st of October? So, for example, say you have made a sale on 30th of September, right? But the consideration is received on 1st of October. So would this, and assuming that from that particular buyer, that consideration received during this previous year has crossed 50 lakh. So you make an invoice of 1 crore rupee on 30th of September, receive the money on 1st of October. On 30th of September, the instant provisions were not applicable, so you did not disclose it on the invoice. On 1st of October, would you require to pay TCS on this 1 crore received? Answer is yes. As I said, although we may disclose this TCS on our invoice, however, the law says that this TCS is applicable on receipt of consideration. Therefore, even if you have billed on 30th September, but amount is received on 1st of October, TCS is required to be paid to the central government on these receipts. The question is, how do you do it? It is recommended to raise a commercial debit note. Generally under GST, we say that debit note hardam GST debit note hona chahiye, right? But in this instant case, since there would not be any GST on TCS, as has been clarified by the CBIC, therefore, the debit note should be a commercial debit note. You just collect this TCS and pay it off to the government on 7th of November, right? Now the question, another question in this case is, say you have a receipt of 25 lakh till 29th of September from a particular customer, and you receive 75 lakh rupees from that customer on 1st October for old sales. On what amount would you collect the TCS? The answer is on 50 lakh rupees. Why? Because the first 50 lakh rupees is excluded from the 206C1H. This provision is applicable only on receipt of consideration more than rupees 50 lakh in a particular previous year. However, another question in this is, if in the till 30th September you have made a collection of 1 crore rupees from a particular customer, do you have to pay TCS on 50 lakh rupees? That is the remaining amount after subtracting 50 lakh rupees. Answer is no. जो 30th सितंबर तक हुआ वो हुआ. अब 1st अक्टूबर से आप देखोगे, 1st अक्टूबर के बाद अगर कोई कलेक्शन है तो आप उसमें TCS पे कर दोगे, provided your 50 lakh rupees threshold per buyer is crossed. This we have already discussed. Previous year means from 1st of April 2020. Now motor vehicles. You see, under 206C1F, if there is a motor vehicle sale where the value of per motor vehicle is more than 10 lakh rupees, then TCS under 206C1F is applicable on sale of such motor vehicle to a customer, right? So the criteria of application of 206C1F is the sale should be to a consumer, right? The value of per motor vehicle should be more than 10 lakh rupees. However, in case these two conditions are not fulfilled, then 206C1F would not be applicable, but 206C1H would be applicable. So, if the value per motor vehicle is less than 10 lakh rupees and the total sale to the particular customer is more than 50 lakh rupees in the previous year, then TCS under 206C1H would be applicable and not 1F, right? This is the thumb rule. First, you see 206C1F is applicable or not. If it is not applicable, then you go to 1H. Then you see 1H is applicable or not. And if 1H is applicable, you apply 1H, right? So that has been clarified adequately in this circular number 17. Now, few pertinent questions. Would there be any TCS on GST, right? So the instant billing we have discussed in our example on the invoice value 1 crore rupees plus 18 lakh rupees is the invoice value. The TCS would be on the entire invoice value 1 crore 18 lakh rupees. What happens if we get a credit note? If we issue a credit note to the customer. Now, credit note, we all know, we are in industry. We can't even count the types of credit notes which can be issued. It can be for price revision, it can be for sales return, it can be for passback, it can be a scheme related credit note, it can be a dispute related credit note, or a deficiency of goods related credit note. So many things are there. So credit note are various kinds. So the question was, do we reverse this TCS on issue of credit notes? Well, it has been answered in, as I said, the CBDT has not taken a view, a practical view, I would say. They have considered कि भाई लॉ है कंसिडरेशन के ऊपर, तो इनवॉइस के ऊपर आपको कलेक्ट ही नहीं करना. हम तो आपको कह रहे हैं कि भाई आप जब कलेक्ट हो जाओ तो आप टीसीएस पेमेंट करो. तो मतलब क्रेडिट नोट तो आप नेट ऑफ करके ही पेमेंट करोगे. However, they have not taken cognizance of the fact that practically many industries are paying on invoice value itself. They are not waiting for the consideration to save themselves from future disputes. तो अगर अब क्वेश्चन है कि अगर आप इनवॉइस के ऊपर ही कलेक्ट करके पे कर दे रहे हो 206C1H का टीसीएस, then what do you do for credit notes? Do you reverse this TCS on credit notes? The answer, as per my view, is no. Once collected and paid, you should not reverse this TCS. Otherwise, unnecessarily, there would be a litigation, because in the circular also it is said that no adjustment for sales return or any other taxes or discounts should be there. So field formations would take a roundabout view and a revenue centric view in the instant case, and there might be chances of further litigation if you are reversing the TCS, which is collected and paid on invoice value. So my view is that once it is collected and paid, you should not reverse this TCS on any credit note, even for sales return. Just now, half an hour back, the CFO of a large enterprise called me and said कि और सब क्रेडिट नोट के ऊपर ठीक है यार, व्हाट डू यू डू फॉर सेल्स रिटर्न? गुड्स ही नहीं है बायर के पास. फ्रेंड्स, प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड, दिस इज नॉट जीएसटी. जीएसटी में सेक्शन 16 आईटीसी का अगर आप एनालॉजी ड्रॉ करोगे, द CFO ड्यू एनालॉजी विद सेक्शन 16 ऑफ जीएसटी कि यार आईटीसी हम तभी लेते हैं जब हमारे पास गुड्स रहता है. जब गुड्स ही नहीं है तो हम आईटीसी कैसे रखें? तो टीसीएस भी वही है, जब सामने वाले के पास गुड्स ही नहीं बचा तो वो टीसीएस का क्रेडिट कैसे लेगा? वो डिस्प्यूट नहीं करेगा. फ्रेंड्स, इनकम टैक्स इज नॉट जीएसटी. There is no provision that the goods should be there. It is just a collection. It is not even a tax, right? So you have collected and you have paid. The counterparty has got a credit. It is a fact that there is a collection which has been done from it on account of advance income tax. If you talk in a general industry language, and if there has been a collection from him, it is his vested right under Article 300A of the Constitution to get this credit. Also under Article 265 of the Constitution, the government cannot make any collection which is not within their purview. So my opinion in this regard in case of credit note is that the TCS once collected and paid to the government should not be reversed. either for sales return, discount, or any kind of credit note. For non-residents, airlines in airports, TCS need not be charged. It has been clarified. So friends, with this, we have now various FAQs which we have collected. Our team, they have received and implemented these TCS related provisions across the country in various companies. So on that basis, we have prepared certain frequently asked questions. I would be taking more questions, but just to give you an understanding of what are the general issues. Other than this, if you have, I would be happy to take more questions at the end of the webinar. First of all, the pertinent question which I've already answered is that for simplicity's sake, would it be a correct compliance of law if we charge or we collect TCS on the invoice itself? Well, my view in this is that the word charge should not be used. The word collection or disclosure should be used on the invoice. So it is not a charge. It is a disclosure of receivable or a collection on the invoice. Yes, to keep matters simple, you can disclose the TCS on your invoice because, as I said, the counterparty would be requiring some document from you to pay you this TCS amount. Otherwise, how will they pay? You have only two options, either to disclose on the invoice or to issue a commercial debit note. So for every invoice, it is not practicable to issue a separate debit note. Therefore, it can be done that you disclose the amount of TCS on the invoice itself, collect and pay it off to the government. The question again came due to the with the IT people. Now all these ERP implementers, they were saying, sir, on the whole invoice value, again, it might be difficult, and the enterprises are requiring line item wise. Say you have 4 line items in your invoice. Many a time the customer requires that per line item wise you show me the TCS, how much you are charging me. Don't make it on the full invoice. So is it possible to, or is it would be adequate compliance of law if line item wise you disclose the TCS on the invoice? Answer is yes. You can disclose line item wise this TCS. However, as I said, it is not a charge. It is a mere disclosure for collection of tax at source. GST on TCS or TCS on GST, it has been clarified again in the circular also, and it has been clarified even previously by the CBDT as on the FAQ, and it has been held in Vinod Rathore case by the Honorable High Court of Madhya Pradesh that GST would be chargeable on the TCS would be chargeable on the GST amount, and it has been clarified by the CBIC wide circular dated 19th of July 2017. I think the circular number was 23 of 2017 under GST, that there would be no GST on TCS. So TCS would be there applicable on GST. So 1 crore 18 lakh is your invoice value. You would be collecting 0.075% on 1 crore 18 lakhs of rupees. Would there be TCS on stock transfer? Answer is no, as TCS is on sale of goods. Although all your branches state-wise, they might have different TAN numbers, but TCS would not be applicable on stock transfers, although GST would be applicable on stock transfers. TCS on receipt for old bill, I have already clarified this, that even if you make the collection after 1st of October, but the sales is made even on 30th of September, even then, if the threshold of 50 lakh rupees is crossed, TCS provisions would be applicable on the collection. So you raise a debit note and collect and pay it off to the government. Categorization of buyers, as I said, central government, state government, local embassy, local authority, exporters, etc., would not be within the purview of this 206C1H as buyers. So yes, in the ERP, change in the masters would be required, whereby you should categorize the buyers into these categories: central government, state government, local authority, embassy, etc., etc. Now, as I said, again, for those assessees, there are many assessees where especially the trading companies, where the profitability is hardly 2 to 3% of the turnover, because that is the commission, even less than 2 to 3%, because the commission on trading is hardly 2 to 3% nowadays. So after deducting of all the indirect expenses, profitability may be even 1.5% sometimes. So yes, your advance tax calculations in those cases would require a reconsideration, especially for trading companies with low profit margins who have never seen this TCS before on their own sales, on their own purchase. So you must do the advance tax calculation, revise it, and 15th of December, when you are paying advance tax, you must recalculate and take the impact of this TCS which has been collected from you. Okay, one pertinent question which was asked is that why should we talk about this 50 lakh? Can we do this? Can we just charge TCS on or collect TCS on all our bills, irrespective of this 50 lakh threshold, because it is a very small amount? Well, the answer is that the buyer may dispute, right? You may want to collect, however the law says that there is a threshold of 50 lakh rupees. So it is a commercial decision. If your buyer is happy, you might go ahead and pay TCS on all the transactions, collect and pay. However, many a times we have seen the buyers dispute this because it is not the law, and they insist on this 50 lakh rupees threshold to be taken into consideration. So this is an entirely commercial decision. Okay. Now, TCS on transactions which are subject to TDS. Let us take one example. Circular, in 2012 there was a circular, I think 21 of 2012. That number of the circular was 21, whereby it was clarified that if a software changes hands twice, so the maker of the software, he sells the software to A. Now A just trades in that software and sells the same software to B. So the second sale of the software would not be liable to TDS, right? In this case, would TCS under 206C1H be applicable? Friends, in this case, you might look at the provision under 206C1H, which says that the instant TCS is not applicable if TDS is liable and paid, right? So not only liability of TDS is required, payment of TDS is also required. If TDS is not paid to the government under any other section, then 206C1H would be applicable. तो अब हमें काफी सारी कंपनीज ने पूछा, सर अब ये सॉफ्टवेयर, अब हमें क्या पता सामने वाला टीडीएस काटेगा कि नहीं काटेगा? माय आंसर इज, फ्रेंड्स, इफ अगर सामने वाला टीडीएस नहीं काटता आपका, तो आपकी लाइबिलिटी है, आप टीसीएस जमा कर दो उसके ऊपर और सामने वाले को डेबिट नोट रेज कर दो. टू कीप थिंग्स ट्रांसपेरेंट एंड सिंपल, सामने वाले से पूछ लो आप कि साहब आप TDS काटोगे कि नहीं काटोगे. If it deducts TDS, well and good. If it does not, you just collect and pay off this TCS under 206C1H. Again, friends, many a times people take a view on the basis of the मेटीरियलिटी कि चलो 0.75% है, पे कर दो. बट ये 0.75 नहीं रहेगा, फ्यूचर में 1, 2, 5% भी हो सकता है. तो हमें अपनी इस चीज में क्लैरिटी रखनी है. मटेरियलिटी और नो मटेरियलिटी, द लॉ इज दैट द बायर मस्ट बी लायबल एंड मस्ट पे द TDS टू द गवर्नमेंट. तो हमें उसी के हिसाब से चलना है. इफ द बायर हैज नॉट पेड or not deducted the TDS, you please pay off this TCS. Okay, so what are the compliances for this TCS? There are 5 compliances. First of all, 7th of the next month, you need to pay the TCS to the government wide Challan 281. 15th of the next quarter of the month next to the quarter, that is the first return for Q3 of 2021 would be filed on 15th of January 2021 in form 27EQ. And after 15 more days, that is 31st of January or 30th of January, you need to issue the certificate in form 27D. Along with that, it is very important to reconcile, right? We will come to the checklist. We have a checklist to take you through the various reconciliations which you should do, so that tomorrow there is no liability on you. Okay, book adjustments and FOC transactions. This is one of the cases which President has asked me to deliberate on. So first of all, book adjustments. Are book adjustments liable for this TCS? So let us take one example of a book adjustment. Say you have a receivable and payable from a particular buyer. तो आपको 1 करोड़ मिलना है बायर से और 50 लाख आपको उसको पेमेंट करनी है. तो आप TCS जो है वो 1 करोड़ पे दोगे या 50 लाख पे दोगे? The answer is book adjustment should also be considered as a consideration. The word used is the receipt of consideration. Consideration is not defined under Income Tax Act. However, it is defined under, again, Contract Act. And consideration includes not only money, but value in money's terms. So any book adjustment by which your liability is going down, that is also considered to be as a consideration. Similarly, somebody was asking me a few days back कि GST में भी एक TDS होता है. तो आप अगर PSU को सप्लाई करोगे GST में, तो PSU आपको 1 या 2% TDS काट के आपको पेमेंट करेगी. So suppose your invoice value is 1 crore, the PSU will deduct 1%, say TDS under GST and pay you 99 lakh rupees. तो आपको TCS अंडर इनकम टैक्स 99 के ऊपर देनी है या 1 करोड़ के ऊपर देनी है? सेम एनालॉजी आई वुड से, कंसिडरेशन इज नॉट ओनली इन मनी बट इन मनी टर्म्स. सो दिस TDS under GST for which you would be getting a certificate and for which you can take a credit, that is also consideration, and you need to pay TCS under 206C1H on the TDS under GST also. और भी कोई, अगर आपको मान लो, अगेन द क्वेश्चन इज कि थर्ड पार्टी, मान लो इंश्योरेंस, आपकी गुड्स डिस्ट्रॉय हो गई और आपको बायर ने पेमेंट नहीं किया बट इंश्योरेंस वाले ने आपको पेमेंट किया है, तो TCS लगेगा कि नहीं लगेगा? अगेन देयर इज वेरियस केस लॉज दैट जिससे भी आपको पैसा मिलता है, the consideration should have been received and you must pay the TCS even if consideration is received from a third party. The sale, if it is there of goods, then and consideration is received, TCS liability is applicable. FOC transactions, where goods are sent free of cost to another person, right? No consideration is received, right, in either money or money's terms. कुछ भी नहीं मिलता अपने को, तो there is no question of TCS under 206C1H. Again, another issue in this is drawings. मान लो सेल्फ कंजम्पशन हम करते हैं, मान लो हमारा लैपटॉप का बिजनेस है एंड एक लैपटॉप हम उसे अपने बिजनेस में यूज करते हैं, तो हम क्या एंट्री करेंगे, एक जर्नल एंट्री पास करेंगे, गुड्स अकाउंट क्रेडिट करेंगे, माने स्टॉक अकाउंट क्रेडिट करेंगे और कैपिटल गुड अकाउंट डेबिट करेंगे. तो there is no sale, you cannot sell to one own self, right? Therefore there is no consideration which is received and there is no question of 206C1H TCS in the instant case. So I suppose this FOC transactions and drawings and self consumption I have clarified. Okay, ये 10 करोड़ का जो वैल्यू है फॉर पर बिजनेस, बिजनेस का अगर 10 करोड़ का टर्नओवर होता है प्रीवियस ईयर में, तो टीसीएस इस साल में एप्लीकेबल होगा. द क्वेश्चन इज 10 crores वो शुड बी इंक्लूसिव ऑफ जीएसटी और एक्सक्लूसिव ऑफ जीएसटी. The answer as per ICDS and section 145A of Income Tax Act is that it should be inclusive of GST. So you must consider the GST amount also for computing this 10 crore rupees threshold limit for liability of TCS. Goods की हमने बात कर ली, ड्राइंग्स की हमने बात कर ली, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी वी हैव डिस्कस्ड. Lottery. Again, lottery, is it goods? Answer is no. Again, आपको सेल ऑफ गुड्स एक्ट देखना है. सेल ऑफ गुड्स एक्ट में एक्शनेबल क्लेम गुड्स नहीं है. माइंड दैट जीएसटी आप मत देखो गुड्स में, क्योंकि जीएसटी में एक्शनेबल क्लेम गुड्स है. टैक्सेबल है कि नहीं है वो अलग बात है. लॉटरी इन जीएसटी इज टैक्सेबल एज एन एक्शनेबल क्लेम and which is deemed to be goods, mind that. But sale of goods acts में lottery goods नहीं है, तो it is an actionable claim. TCS is not liable on lottery. This we have discussed. TDS. Okay, TCS on sale of goods with installation charges. So the question is, goods आपने बेचा और installation charges भी उसमें चार्ज किया. सपोज 1 करोड़ का गुड्स है और इंस्टॉलेशन चार्जेस 10 लाख रुपीस का है इंक्लूसिव ऑफ जीएसटी, तो आप टीसीएस जो चार्ज करोगे वो 1 करोड़ पे करोगे कि 1 करोड़ 10 पे करोगे? द आंसर इज, अगर इनवॉइस में आपने अलग अलग दिखाया है गुड्स और सर्विस, जस्ट लाइक हम 194C का कंप्लायंस करते हैं, तो अगर आपने 1 करोड़ अलग से गुड्स दिखाया तो आप 1 करोड़ के ऊपर चार्ज करो, कलेक्ट करो टीसीएस. अगर 1 करोड़ 10 पूरा का पूरा कॉम्पोजिट सप्लाई आपने दिखाया हुआ है गुड्स और सर्विसेज का एंड इट इज कंसिडर्ड टू बी एज गुड्स ओनली, देयरफॉर आप 1 करोड़ 10 पूरा कॉम्पोजिट सप्लाई के ऊपर जो गुड्स है उसके ऊपर आप टीसीएस कलेक्ट करो. इंटरेस्ट, नाउ दिस इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. सी अगेन आप अपने जीएसटी में नहीं जाते हैं, राइट? But generally, if interest is collected on delayed payment received for goods, it partakes the nature of the goods itself, right? Interest, there are two kinds. One, it can be just a financial charge, right? जैसे लोन के ऊपर इंटरेस्ट है, वो एक फाइनेंशियल चार्ज है. बट इफ इंटरेस्ट इज कलेक्टेड फॉर delayed receipt of payment for goods, it partakes the nature of the goods itself, right? And this interest also becomes a consideration receipt for the instant goods. Therefore, on interest on delayed payments, TCS under 206C1H would be liable. As a matter of fact, GST would also be liable on this interest, and the HSN code of the goods underlying would be used. So काफी सर्विस कंपनीज हैं जो they are caught sleeping, I would say. Many service providers are there, they say अरे ये तो goods के ऊपर है, हमारे ऊपर applicable ही नहीं है. Friends, this is applicable for all companies. Even if you are a service provider, right, and your turnover is more than 10 crore rupees, on capital goods sale, TCS under 206C1H is applicable, right? So for service companies, one should not ignore these provisions. It is applicable on capital goods. Or agar scrap sale, again, it is applicable for service company as far as scrap sale is concerned. Now a question might be asked कि scrap के ऊपर तो 206C1 applicable होता है. Friends, there is a difference. Scrap under 206C1 is considered to be scrap only from manufacturing process. तो सर्विस कंपनी, मान लो आप एक कॉल सेंटर हो, आपकी जो गुड्स हैं वो डिस्ट्रॉय हो गए, मान लो फर्नीचर आपका डिस्ट्रॉय हो गया, आपने उसको एज अ स्क्रैप सेल कर दिया, दैट इज नॉट under the purview of 206C1. It will come under the purview of 206C1H. Mind that, right? So even for service companies, 206C1H would be applicable if the other conditions are fulfilled. अगर फर्नीचर आपका 50 लाख से ऊपर का है सेम बायर को, तो ये प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल होती है आपके लिए. Another question which President told me to answer is TCS on deemed export. Even I would take up this slump sale. तो अगर आपका SEZ, FTWZ, EOU, डीम्ड एक्सपोर्ट कुछ भी है, तो TCS एप्लीकेबल होगा कि नहीं होगा? आंसर इज होगा. Until and unless there is a clarification, the law is very clear. It is not applicable only on export of goods. Question might be asked कि all these SEZ and all are also tax free, then where will they take the credit? Well, they might have to take a refund of this, but as of now, until unless a clarification or a circular or a remover of difficulty order comes, TCS would be applicable on supply to SEZ also. Slump sale applicable होगा कि नहीं होगा? So my view is that slump sale is not goods, right? Since it is not goods, it is the sale of a business as a whole. Therefore, TCS under 206C1H would not be applicable on slump sale. डिस्काउंटिंग और फैक्टरिंग, अगर मान लो आपने बिल डिस्काउंटिंग करवाया या आपने बिल को फैक्टरिंग करवाया, सो देयर इज अ डिफरेंस. अगेन आप डिस्काउंटिंग करवाते हो बैंक में जाके, तो आपको अपना कमीशन कलेक्ट करके बैंक आपको पेमेंट कर देता है फॉर द इनवॉइस वैल्यू. सेम अगर आप फैक्टर को देते हो तो वो अपना कमीशन काट के, अपना चार्जेस काट के आपको बैलेंस पेमेंट कर देता है. द क्वेश्चन इज, वुड दिस TCS बी एप्लीकेबल in these cases? Well, again, until a clarification comes, these can be considered. While there is again a difference, I would not say the same analogy should be drawn, but these are third party receipts, and it is a receipt of a consideration in value terms, in money terms. Therefore, as per my opinion, TCS would be applicable even if the money is received from a bill discounting perspective or from a factor. So this PSU one we have clarified. Okay. Yesterday again, another of our members, they asked us a question on coal. वो कहते हैं कोल के ऊपर 1% TCS ऑलरेडी है, under 206C1. But if the manufacturer submit it, but if this coal is used for further manufacturing process and the manufacturer uh, gives a declaration in form 27C, then TCS under 206C1 would not be applicable, right? The question asked was that whether if 206C1 was not applicable, would 206C1H would be applicable? Our opinion is yes, it would be applicable, because the same analogy as far as motorcycles are concerned would be applied over here. अगर 206C1 applicable नहीं हो रहा है and there is no TCS which is collected and paid to the government, then the instant TCS under 206C1H would be applicable. Many a times a confusion is there of confusing 206C1 with or 206C1F with 206C1H as far as this manufacturing process is concerned. तो 206C1 में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए इफ अगर मान लो आपका स्क्रैप आप बेच रहे हो किसी को, या मान लो आप कोल बेच रहे हो किसी को और वो फर्दर अपने मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में यूज करता है, तो 206C1 के अंदर टीसीएस नहीं लगेगा. बट ऐसा 206C1H में नहीं है. Even if the counterparty uses it for manufacturing, this 206C1H would be applicable. Similarly, 206C1 or 1F PSU के ऊपर applicable नहीं होता है, but in this case it is applicable even on PSU sale, right? So please do not confuse 206C1H with 1 and 1F. Well, just to take you through the other provisions of 206C, TCS किसके ऊपर लगेगा? As I said, 206C1, it is applicable on scrap. Then there are tendu leaves, timber and other produce of forest. 206C1C is applicable on contract or lease license of toll plaza, marking lot, mining, quarrying. 1F is applicable on motorcycles, we have discussed. LRS, we would come to 206C1G, right? Now, there is one another question that अगर TCS certificate अगर गुम हो गया, if it is lost, then would a duplicate TCS certificate do? Answer is yes, it would do, but there has to be an indemnity bond from the buyer. Okay, so what are the compliance requirements, friends? We have made a 10-point checklist, as I said. First of all, reconciliation is very important, because the moment you collect TCS and pay it off to the government, the buyer will certainly ask you to match the ledgers. So even though you might be paying on receipt of consideration, but the buyer will always want from you a invoice-wise reconciliation. So it is very important, just like GST, you do a two-way reconciliation invoice-wise. To prevent disputes with your buyer, it is important that you do a reconciliation invoice-wise for this 206C1H also. So you have to see again, for per buyer, most important is that for any buyer, if you feel that or if in your database you have fed a program whereby from any buyer, if you have not made a sale to the buyer of 50 lakh, you are not collecting TCS, well, be aware that it is on receipt. तो आपको दो conditions fit करनी पड़ेगी अपने ERP में for excluding a buyer. One is the sales to a buyer of 50 lakh and the other is receipt of consideration from the buyer more than 50 lakh rupees. It is always advisable to have a separate ledger for this TCS with the buyers, right? If they are the larger buyers, because again a reconciliation would be required by the buyers. तो आप जो buyer से collect कर रहे हो, आप जो government को pay कर रहे हो, there has to be a reconciliation show. So with what we recommend to our to our clients is that you have a separate ledger for this TCS separately for TCS receivable. And this would be required for your balance sheet also to show a receivable amount and correspondingly maybe to show the debtors. Ensure that your PAN number is correctly mentioned and your buyer's PAN number is correctly mentioned, क्योंकि आपने डिपॉजिट कर दिया गलत पैन में, फिर से आपको रेक्टिफिकेशन करनी होगी, क्योंकि if the PAN number is wrong, many times during TDS regime we have seen so many corrections to the TDS returns are required. So PAN number of the buyer has to be adequately fed into your system, right? Well, this is the return 27EQ. This is the return for TCS, right? So party wise, you have to show the total value of the transaction party wise. Mind that this value which they are asking is not the sales value. It is the amount of receipt. However, if you are doing it on sale basis, that is on invoice basis, you might put in the invoice value. Amount received or debited, again, the amount out of this you have received, date, amount, tax collected, etc. Right? So various total tax collected, total tax deposited, date of collection, rate of collection, right? Reason for non-collection. So it is quite a large return. It is not a simple return. You have to give the reasons, and also while filling in the return in January, one has to be careful. Right. So, well, as I said, it is a small provision, but a lot of impact is there. With this, I come to the conclusion of my deliberations on 206C1H. Now, two other friends, important amendments are there from 1st of October under TCS and TDS, which I would take you through, and other few recent amendments in TCS and TDS before we can take on the questions. 206C1G on LRS and collection from by overseas tour program packager. So what are the provisions? They are not much applicable to you if you see it in the first glimpse, but I would tell you the critical points which might be applicable to you, to your company, as far as your directors and senior managers are concerned. First is under LRS. What is LRS? Liberalized Remittance Scheme. Under FEMA, it allows you to transfer, or it allows a resident of India to transfer foreign exchange per annum of $250,000, right? So around 1 crore 80 lakh rupees in INR. Resident per resident can transfer out of India for permissible capital and current account transactions. Now, what is a capital and current account transaction, and what are permissible capital and current account transactions? Well, it is very simple. Under FEMA, capital account transactions are those transactions which affect your foreign assets and liabilities. Current account transactions are those which are not capital account transactions. Current account transactions are always you see eligible or always permitted unless they are restricted. Capital account transactions are always restricted unless they are permitted, right? तो उल्टा है, current account transaction हरदम permitted है, capital account transactions हरदम restricted है unless permitted, right? So 206C1G it says अगर किसी कोई LRS स्कीम में 7 लाख रुपीस से ज्यादा बैंक से परचेज किया है तो AD banker would collect 5% TCS over and above 7 lakh rupees. And this is per individual. Mind that LRS scheme is not for companies, HUF, firms, etc. It is only for individuals and residents. ओवरसीज स्टोर पैकेजर, अगर आप कोई ओवरसीज स्टोर में जा रहे हो एज एन इंडिविजुअल, तो ओवरसीज स्टोर पैकेजर 5% TCS लेगा आपसे, एंड इट विल गिव यू अ क्रेडिट ऑल्सो. Mind that again, it is for individuals. So this is 206C1G. Now, important point in this 206C1G is that you can go through these slides. I will share these slides with merchant chamber, who can send it to the participants. So I have just discussed these slides on what are the permissible capital and current account transactions. But what I would draw your attention to is that loans to non-residents or PIO, please note again, if you as a resident are giving a loan to a non-resident or PIO, person of Indian origin, right, in his NRO account, and there are various FEMA regulations, it has to be interest free more than 1 year, etc. So अगर आप NRI को एक लोन दे रहे हो under the FEMA Act, if it is allowed, then that would also be under LRS, right? तो LRS में वो लोन आएगा आपका. और अगर वो लोन LRS में आएगा, या आप कोई NRI को गिफ्ट कर रहे हो, that would also be under that provisions of 206C1G. तो NRI को लोन या गिफ्ट अंडर LRS in INR to the NRO account would also be liable under this 206C1G. So this one must note for if you are practicing, right? (194O), again a new provision on e-commerce operators. Now there are two critical aspects in this which I will discuss very, very briefly. So what is this 194O? It is applicable from 1st October 2020. NR 194O is applicable on an e-commerce operator through which a e-commerce participant does a transaction for facilitation of supply of goods or services. On that, the e-commerce operator has to deduct TDS at the rate of 1% on the gross amount, right? तो अगर मान लो आप Amazon के थ्रू अपना कुछ बेचते हो goods, तो Amazon, and say you are selling goods worth 1 crore through Amazon to a buyer A, तो A जो आपको पेमेंट करेगा उसके ऊपर वो जो 1 crore rupees Amazon के थ्रू आपको पेमेंट करेगा, तो Amazon is liable to pay 1% TDS deduct and pay to the government. अगर वो पार्टी, most important is this deeming fiction in the explanation. If say A, your buyer, if he does not pay through Amazon also, अगर वो directly buyer आपको पेमेंट करेगा तो भी Amazon को 1% TDS पे करना पड़ेगा. This is a hardship, right? So even if Amazon, you sell to a buyer A and Amazon के थ्रू आप सेल कर रहे हो, तो Amazon is liable to deduct and pay 1% TDS on that amount also, right? So other provisions you can go through at your own pace. अगर Amazon के थ्रू आप पे कर रहे हो और आप गेटवे के थ्रू, पेमेंट गेटवे के थ्रू आपको पेमेंट रिसीव हो रही है, तो भी वो एप्लीकेबल, तो दो TDS एप्लीकेबल होना चाहिए in this case, but it has been clarified by Circular 17 that only once it would be applicable. Yeah, Sanjeev ji, you are saying something.
Mr. Jalan, I'm sorry, we are a little bit ahead of time now, so running out of time, and Akash ji also has to catch up something else. So, you know, for any other queries, these are very interesting topics, but unfortunately, due to paucity of time, we have to stop right now and can't take further questions. But we definitely will collect all the questions creeping out in the mind of our members and seek the replies from Mr. Jalan. So hope Vivekji, we will not mind and to
Sanjeev ji,
stop you right now.
Sanjeev ji, are you there?
Yeah, I am here.
I'm suggesting that we take a few questions from our members who've been patiently waiting for their turn.
Okay.
And, if Mr. Jalan so agrees, we could take maybe 3 or 5 questions, and more questions the Secretariat could forward to Mr. Jalan, and his office could, send response in due course. But we should definitely take a few questions, because I know a lot of members have been eagerly waiting for their opportunity to ask questions, and we should definitely go ahead and do that. So let's, if Mr. Jalan is okay, we should extend the program for another 10 minutes and make the questions happen.
Oh yes, sure. I thought I was not given a outside time limit. That is why maybe this spillover. Yeah, we can take questions, sir.
Fair enough.
So Munmundi, can you open up the floor?
Yes, please. Yes. Sir, Mr. Hemant Kumar Bhattacharya.
Yeah.
We can take questions from the chat box also, sir. He has written.
But it's better that you open the floor. Let members ask. We are open for 4 questions.
So, Munmundi, please make Mr. Bhattacharya part of the panel, and he can ask his question directly to Mr. Jalan.
Yeah.
He may be allowed to talk.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Bhattacharya, please go ahead with your question.
Is it audible to you?
Yes.
In case of credit note for material rejected and returned back, then TCS applicable. TCS will be applicable.
See, as I said, TCS is applicable.
Inter-consignment is rejected and returned back. In that case, TCS will be.
I'm answering that. So, if, as I said, TCS is applicable only on collection. So, if it is rejected and returned back, so there is no collection, and therefore TCS should not be applicable. However, if you have collected the TCS and paid on the invoice value itself, then you should not reverse, as per my opinion.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Mr. Saraf.
Yes. Mr. Saraf?
Yeah, Krishna.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah, Krishna, put up your question.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Jalan. Good evening, Sanjeev Bhai. Good evening, Akash ji.
Good evening.
We function as a Dell credit agent and consignment stockist for a company called ONGC Petro Edition Limited, who are manufacturing polymers, HDP, PP, and LNDP. So in the consignment sales which we are making, we get commission from the company and we are raising commission invoices. So I had a question whether this commission invoice which we are raising on our principal, do we have to charge TCS on that, Mr. Jalan?
Sir, commission is a service. On commission invoice, there is no TCS applicability.
There is no TCS applicability. Okay.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Sanjeev Bhai, for the opportunity.
Okay.
Nishant ji, please go ahead with your question. Mr. Nishant Vyas.
Unmute yourself, Nishant ji.
Nishant ji, are you there? There's another hand raised.
Yeah, please.
Excuse me, gentlemen, please go ahead with your question. You have not written your name. Then there was one question from Mr. Ayush Chaudhary, but I believe he's no longer there. He's not featuring on the list.
Correct. And his question has been suitably answered by Mr. Jalan, so I don't see a reason to bring that up. So with this, Mr. Jalan, I would like to, on behalf of the chamber, and also as somebody who has, had to incorporate this whole TCS in his business, I would like to propose a vote of thanks and, express our deep appreciation for you taking this time out to enlighten our members. The MSME sector has been really hard hit during this pandemic. I'm sure this workshop has been useful and effective for providing information and handholding services to address issues relating to TDS and TCS. Tax issues have been quite a challenge for the MSMEs, as most of them are neither equipped to handle such matters nor can afford to hire a battery of experts. We are thankful to you, Mr. Jalan, for addressing our members and also responding to some of our queries. We wish we had more time and we could, get more questions to you. We thank all the participants for their enthusiastic participation and members of the media fraternity for joining this program. With these words, I once again thank Mr. Jalan for his insights and wish him the very best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Akash.